All right, here we have another update of Project Shadow. And what I've been working on recently has mainly been combat. In the last video, I showcased my hit reactions as well as some of the new animations that I created and the functionality for the shadow arts. Now, shadow arts is a mix of martial arts utilizing Cole and his shadow. In the last video, I didn't have a full combo. Here, I do have a full combo. A full combo is a 5-hit series of attacks. I'm not too happy with the final attack. I'm going to go in and rework that and figure out an actual way to wrap it up. But what we have so far is kind of a back and forth between Shadow and Cole. So same combo as last time. I think the things that I added are the last 2 attacks. So here that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the new thing is the shadow kick, and so like the last one is like a little uppercut, but it didn't really turn out the way that I was envisioning. But you know, it's just kind of like a weak little slap, like bop. So yeah, definitely gonna fix that, gonna change that, but that's the combo right there. There are light attacks and there are heavy attacks. So there's a 5-hit light combo and I have a 3-hit heavy combo. And I did want this to be a 5-hit heavy combo, but it was kind of hard for me to envision what a heavy combo chain would look like. So I ended up just stopping at 3 for the time being, but I think it came out pretty cool. I'll showcase that here as well. Boom, 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 boom. Bop, 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 bop. Yep. It's just a cool little attack sequence that I wanted to make feel a little bit heavier. So this one has just a lot of hits in the combo, and you're able to kind of chain it together to kind of juggle them in midair. I want to be able to air juggle, do aerial attacks and things of that nature. So I'm gonna have to fine tune that a little bit more. Maybe increase the height that they get knocked up. I'll figure that out. But I really like how the heavy combo came together. It starts with a bash, and then you got Shadow following up with like a Beyblade kind of spin attack, which is really cool. And then finishing it off with like a handstand spin kick, which just looks cool. Of course, it's kind of goofy. He's just spinning in a circle, but it portrays what it's supposed to be. So I think it looks pretty cool so far. And heavy attacks, I honestly don't have too much of a plan for the heavy attacks, but I'm thinking that you'll have to have shadow energy in order to expend like heavy attacks, because heavy attacks are going to do more damage, and yeah, that's really pretty much it. It's just going to be something that does more damage, so you're not able to just spam it and use it whenever. I think it's going to be a gauge that builds up as you attack and as you do combos. So that's probably the direction that heavy attacks are going to go. So that's the shadow arts out of the way. That's everything that I've added so far. Then we moved on to the shadow sword, and the shadow sword has been upgraded. It went from this right here to this, and of course it's a placeholder sword, but the ideas there, I kind of ended up giving the weapons kind of a style, where they have these rings and then like guards around the handles. That's kind of like the design that I'm going for. So far, the sword kind of looks cool. comparatively. You know, we just had a nice little sword here, but then we got a big sword here. So I thought it looked pretty cool, came out pretty cool. And then we worked on, well, I actually worked on the animations first, and I only just recently reskinned the weapons, but altogether the combo looks like this. So I think in the last video, what I had a 2-hit combo, but now I have a full 5-hit combo, and it looks like this. So same first two, then a little slash, and then a follow-up jump attack into a thrust. It is kind of basic and kind of a little bit wonky, but you know, I always have like a problem figuring out what the last attack is gonna be. So that's why the last attacks are usually kind of goofy. Like this little thrust attack is kind of goofy, but I'm thinking it is going to do some piercing damage, and piercing damage is a damage type that is going to reduce the enemy's health the more it builds up. So the more thrusting attacks that you do, the more piercing attacks that you do, the more that gauge builds up, and once the gauge is full, then it consumes it and it takes a chunk of the health. So that last attack is going to help build up to that. So everything else does slash damage. So it's doing slash damage. If we look at, if I go to full screen here, if we look at the enemy's health, it's taking slash damage, which does damage over time. You can see the health is draining gradually. And that's only by slash damage. You got stagger damage for blunt attacks, like for punching. Speaking of piercing damage, we have the spear, and piercing damage is not implemented at this point, but it's, as I said, the more poking attacks you do, the more it builds up, and then it's going to take a chunk of the enemy's health. It'll take like a percentage. And I was thinking that it was going to be a debuff that lowers the max health, but I'm seeing that that doesn't really make sense, because if you're already doing damage to the enemy, I don't really have plans to have them regenerate health over time. So it's like, it's going to take their health from, say, 200 to 150. But by the time the gauge builds up, their health will already be less than 150, most likely. So it kind of doesn't make sense. So I'm changing it so that it's going to be the current health. So it's going to take a percentage of the current health. That makes a little bit more sense to me, but I think it will also detract their max health as well. And that might matter later, depending on if I do have them regenerate their health. But either way, I just recently worked on only two animations for the spear, because I'm in that same kind of issue where I can't envision what a full combo looks like. But the most important thing is just making sure that I'm able to use the weapon and use the damage type, which is piercing damage. So then I'll be able to properly implement the piercing damage and test it accordingly with the weapon. Before I showcase that, I did want to also show that I have one heavy attack for the Shadow Sword, which is kind of just like a double slash. So it's like bop, bop. And so it's a heavy attack, so it invokes the heavy hit reaction and a little bit of a heavier screen shake. And so that's that. The reason that I wanted to show that before showcasing the spear is because I did end up reusing that same animation for the third attack for the spear. So the spear, it's a pokey boy, so boom, boom, and it is kind of, you know, wonky as all of the animations are going to be as I am, building up my animation skills and all of that. Yeah, it's just a poking weapon, so you see here the third attack, I reused that heavy attack that I just showed for the sword. The idea for the spear is that it is also going to give you a lot of space. It has a generally bigger knockback than the other weapons because it is supposed to be a weapon that you're able to use at range so that you can keep them at bay and attack from a distance. And I'll probably try to adjust it so that the attack is not too close, because right now it gets in a little bit close. So I don't know if I'll have to adjust the animation to properly show that range, or if I'm going to be able to have it like attack without approaching. Because if I don't have it approach, then the hitbox is off a little bit. I mean, even the animation right now just is off because there's not a lot of weight behind it, and it doesn't look like it's connecting properly, because it really isn't. But it conveys the motion that I want to show right now, which is poking. Poke, poke. And so that's the spear. Next we have the scythe. And I did, for the spear and for the scythe, I have the same animation being played. This is the placeholder animation for the starter asset pack, where he's just standing. I just put the sword in his hand, so I don't have anything special for that. But for this, to actually show the spear and so that there's no clipping, I had to make my own idle animation where he's holding it. And I was kind of envisioning more of a dragoon stance, like from Final Fantasy, but it ends up looking very awkward when I try to do the pose, mainly because I don't think I have the weapon set up like super properly from Blender to Unity. So it's hard to really envision like where the spear is supposed to be, like in proportion to Blender, as opposed to having it in Unity, because it might look fine in Blender, but the spear might end up inside the ground. So I'll figure that out later, and I'll figure out the actual posing and how to like properly do that later. But for now, he's just holding it off to the side. It kind of has the stance that I was envisioning, kind of, but not exactly. But the animation is interchangeable with the scythe and the spear. I actually made the idle animation for the scythe first, because I ended up working kind of out of order. I worked on the scythe animations before I worked on the spear animations, but I made the scythe idle animation first and just transferred it over to the spear. There's no heavy attack for the spear. I don't know what a heavy attack would look like for the spear, so that's on hold for now. Same thing for the scythe. There's no heavy attack for the scythe, but I did think that the animation kind of looked cool that I created for the scythe. I will showcase that now. And it's a 5-hit combo, but it's a little bit different than the sword and the shadow arts, because I didn't make a original 5-hit combo. I ended up reusing a couple of animations for that. So it may look a little bit goofy here, but again, I will start showcasing the actual animations. So the first animation here, bop, 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 bop. So I am also having trouble envisioning what a combo will look like for the scythe, but again, just to test the functionality of the lifesteal, which is the special ability that you get for using the scythe, because they all have their own ailments. Again, shadow art is stun, so that it builds up the stagger gauge and the stun gauge. The sword is slashing damage, so it does damage over time. The spear, as I've been talking about, does piercing damage. What the scythe does is lifesteal. So when you take damage, you'll be able to put them into a stagger state, and then you'll be able to use that time to switch to the scythe and then get a little bit of health while they're dazed. Of course, it'll work even better when they're stunned, but the main thing is just being able to do the combos so that I can test lifesteal and make sure that it works. The animations that I created here are this little opening sweep, which I thought just looked cool. The second attack was going to be the first attack, but it didn't feel right having it start off with like this spin here. So I ended up changing it around, and I was like, yeah, I like how that feels a little bit better. So the opening is that, and then it goes into this little double slash. Again, I was having a hard time envisioning like even what the attack should look like, and this looks very goofy, but I did want the scythe to kind of be a little bit special. That's why he's doing like a lot of jumping, a lot of flipping, because I was most excited to work on the scythe. I like scythe weapons, and I think scythes are cool. I think they look cool. So this one kind of feels like it has a little bit of special juice because it is kind of special. So that's what I worked on with this. Again, we have the idle animation here where he's just holding it off to the side. I don't have any running animations or walking animations for the weapons yet, which I definitely want to work on so that it looks natural when he's holding it. So that's the scythe out of the way. And the next thing and the last thing is the hammer. And I really liked the hammer. I liked working on the hammer. I did want to have like the handles incorporated onto the hammer, but it wasn't really fitting right, and it wasn't really easy to work with, so I just completely got rid of it. Just for simple design, kept the rings, of course, but it is a giant hammer, and you know, comparatively to the original one, it's pretty much the same, but it has the rings and it's a little bit more shaped. So the design is pretty cool. This is one of the things that I'm also like very happy with so far. I do like the animations that I put together. They are still very rough, but like just surprisingly with, you know, my skill set right now, and you know, the fact that I didn't really have any plans when it came to actually creating a combo for the hammer. I'm really happy with how it turned out, how the 5-hit combo turned out for this. So if I were to rank like each of the attacks with how proud I am of the attacks, it would go hammer first. No, actually it would go scythe first, hammer second, sword third, shadow arts fourth, and the shadow spear last. So I will showcase the 5-hit combo for the hammer. So we've got some heavy swing, smash, smash, smash. And, you know, it's a hammer. It does hammer things exactly as you would think. So with hammers, you would have a sweeping attack, I think. I think you would have a sweeping attack and a follow-up sweep attack. So I didn't really know what to do with this, so I just started with the sweep, and I'm like, okay, well, how do I follow that up? With another sweep. And then I tried the smash worked pretty well, and then I was like, okay, well, let's follow it up with another smash. You know, it's just a hammer. You just smash things with the hammer. And then I added a spin for a little bit of flare. And then I wasn't sure if I was actually going to be able to do like an overhead swing. And as you can see, it is very wonky. And I think I know why it's wonky. It's how I have the opening animation for the 5th attack. I was expecting it to kind of carry over from the previous attack. So usually when you make animations, you want the end of the animation to go back to like the idle animation. But I didn't do that with the, or did I? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this one does go up with the, this one does go back to the idle animation. Like this one goes back to the idle animation. The second one goes back to the idle animation. Let's see if the third one does. Yeah, the third one goes back to the idle animation. The fourth one goes back to the idle animation. They all start with the idle animation too. So, of course, this goes from the idle animation. Actually, no, the second one doesn't go to the second one starts from here too. So I guess I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I kind of do know what I'm talking about because it definitely has to do with the starting point of the 5th animation. The 5th animation, it kind of does like this weird little flippy thing, which I don't want it to do. It also kind of spazzes out a little bit too, so that kind of sucks, but either way, he does the overhead flip, and I think it looks pretty cool as like a follow-up final animation because it gives it like his all, so it portrays the final hit pretty well because he's giving it his all. So that's the attack animation for the hammer. I think it came out pretty well, and that's all I've been working on so far is the animations for combat. And again, I have the style updated as well. So that's like the most recent thing I worked on was changing the style of the weapons. So that looks pretty cool so far. I actually didn't even have a spear placeholder. I just straight up created the spear. But yeah, that's looking pretty cool. I haven't changed anything with the enemies. I have to hook everything up to like the actual enemies because that's just a target dummy. So they don't share the same scripts, which they need to. They're not set up to actually have hit reactions. I kind of started doing that with this one, but it breaks their patrol, the hit reactions. So the hit reactions are there. It just doesn't transition properly back into the chase state or back into the attack state, and then they end up getting broken. So that's not fully set up yet. But once I have everything kind of squared away and working completely, that includes like adding the sound effects because I'm going to have to create a script controller for that most likely, and the effects and all that stuff. Once I get all of those things ironed away, I think I'll start hooking it up to the actual system, although it might be a good idea to hook up what I have now and then gradually work on it just to make sure that it all works rather than having everything on one guy and being like, oh, it works on this guy, why doesn't it work on that guy? So yeah, I think that's a better way of looking at it. I need to make sure that it works iteratively. That's the word I was looking for. Make sure it works iteratively. All right, so that is where we're at with the current state of the project. Combat, combat, combat. We are just working on combat, and where we'll go after this, I'm not 100% sure, but I do think I'm probably going to revisit the bullet hell mechanic aspect of the game, because right now it is not working with the current system, and it's still just following the YouTube tutorial that I initially started the project with. And that is no good. We want everything to work together cleanly. We want the systems to actually work together and not just be slapped on top of each other. I guess you can say the same thing goes for the starter asset. While it is a good asset to start off with and to prototype things, it really hurt the project not having my own system built from the ground up like I did with Project Feel the Vibe. So I don't know how difficult it's going to be to transition over to my own state machine, to my own character controller. I don't want to kind of pick pieces out of the starter asset and make it my own. I want it to be like an actual fresh system. So I'll have to contemplate that a little bit more, figure that out. But until then, hopefully we can get some more things in, like some sound effects, maybe some visual effects. I'm not too worried about making it look the best right now because I just want to make sure that everything works perfectly. So I'll try not to get too tunnel visioned and again, hopefully get some sound effects and visual effects. But for now, that's where the project is. I'm very happy with the animations I've created so far, and I can't wait to see where we're at later. All right, this has been Michael, and as always, I don't just dress to impress, I dress my games to stun. See you in the next update.